In this video, I'm going to be breaking down a recent food photography photo shoot I did for a local water park in my area. I'm going to be sharing 5 tips that you could utilize for your next food photo shoot. So let's get into it right now. Okay, so first a little backstory on how I landed this gig, especially because I'm not really a food photographer. I'm primarily in the real estate space. So this is the second shoot I've done for this water park called Typhoon, Texas. The first time they reached out was because a local real estate agent also works on the marketing team for Typhoon, Texas. And so they were looking for a photographer and knew that I was in real estate and reached out. So the photos we shot the first time were primarily to showcase their new cabanas that they were opening up, and along with a couple of lifestyle food shots. But now for this second photo shoot, it was primarily just to photograph new food items and totally replace their current photography because they were moving over to a digital menu. So it's gonna be really cool being to see these photos that I shot on their mobile ordering app in the summer. Okay, so tip number 1 is gonna be about using the right gear. And specifically, it's 2 things: lighting and your lens focal length. Honestly, the most important thing to shape the overall look and consistency of your food photography photo shoot is the lighting that you use. Like in this scene right now, I'm using a constant video light that's soft and flattering to have control over the whole scene. And being able to control the lighting that you use will make sure that you have a consistent look throughout all of your photos, along with capturing accurate and natural colors of the food, which is honestly really important. So let's break down some of the lighting that I use specifically for this photo shoot. And as always, keeping it pretty minimal. I haven't mentioned this flash on the channel, I just realized, and it's so versatile. This is a Godox 8200 Pro. So this is honestly a pretty powerful pocket flash, and I'm so happy with it because this little kit comes with an adapter to mount onto a light stand, an extra bulb, and all you need to pair with it is some sort of trigger. So this is a Godox trigger, communicates with this. And I love that this thing is so small but packs a really powerful punch because I've been able to do photo shoots with this outdoors and it can still overpower most sunny days. So that's a big win, especially because I don't want to have to lug around a big giant flash. So this has been a great investment. And if you want to use flash for real estate. And then the next most important thing is to make the light out of this flash soft is a softbox. So I have this Easy Glow softbox beauty dish that works great. So the great thing about this softbox is it literally just pops into place and it's good to go. So this is a 34-inch beauty dish with a grid on it. That way it kind of really narrows in that light source. And that's all I use. This, a adapter for the Bowens mount to hold the flash. And that's pretty much it. That was the whole setup that I used. And I also just used a reflector to balance out the shadows that would be hitting the food on the opposite side so it wasn't so harsh. And I would honestly recommend you use an off-camera flash for stuff like this, especially if you're shooting it on location, because if you're using a video light, like in this case, it works for this scene because this is a pretty dark environment. But if you're out somewhere where it's kind of sunny, like I did in the first photo shoot, I used this for some of those outdoor shots and it was pretty bright outside, most video lights will not be strong enough, so having full control with flash will be a much better route for you. And for flash settings, I just kept it around 1/16 to 1/4 power. That way it really just kind of cut out most of the ambient light and being the only light source. And then the next important thing for the gear that you're gonna use is the focal length. Unlike real estate, you don't wanna have a really wide, distorted look of the photos. You want it to look real natural in how you would see it. So I used a 50mm 1.4 lens. This is the Sigma 50mm 1.4 art lens. And this has been my go-to lately for everything that my 15-35 can't shoot. But the great thing about a 50mm lens is you're gonna get minimal distortion, if any. So it's gonna keep everything realistic. That's why this lens is great for portraits. And you can get really good depth and subject separation using this focal length, especially because you can get natural looking shots and you can get close-ups that look really focused in, almost like a macro shot. That entire gallery that I delivered for them was entirely shot just with this lens. I also brought my 35, my 85, but because of the way things were going and everything was working and looking great, just use the 50. And then here's a pro tip: don't place your light next to where you're shooting. Put it on the opposite side so you're backlighting your subject, in this case the food. You want the food to pop and look really nice, and so if you put it on the same side that you're shooting, everything's gonna look flat. You're gonna have no shadows. So you wanna have it on the opposite side, use a reflector so you can control the shadows so it doesn't look so harsh looking, and you're gonna end up with a much more dynamic food photo shoot. And with food photography, you really want the image to pop. You don't want it to look flat and boring. Okay, so tip number 2, you want to set up a scene for the food that's relatable to it. And because this is a Texas-based water park, we used some things that were relatable to Texas. Like they had a Texas flag print, they had some stars, some rope, and then we also used foliage because that kind of adds to the feel of the photos to fill it in, and it worked out great. I'm really happy with the sets that we built. And it also helped that one of the creative directors there helped out with this shoot, and they had a good eye for this. So we would basically set up a scene, take a photo, check back, tweak some things, and it was really good to bounce ideas off something instead of just doing it all yourself. And the most important thing to think about when you're building these sets is less is more. You'd rather have just a plain looking image where you could clearly see what the subject is than a really distracting photo with tons of things around it and you don't even know what you're looking at. So specifically in this case, I made sure to preview these photos really small, like on my camera, because I knew that these photos were going to be utilized on a mobile app, which is just the size of our phone screen. So I have to be able to see it really small and know exactly what the subject is, what food that they're selling. And so just make sure that you don't make it too busy so it takes away from the subject. Now, before getting into the next tip, I would like to thank the sponsor for this video, Cuts. If you've been around for a while, you know that in practically every video I make, I'm always wearing Cuts. Whether it's a shoot, going out with friends, doing everyday things, the AOT by Cuts is always my go-to. And I wanted to highlight my favorite new tees from the 2023 spring collection and specifically show you 3 ways that you can style them. Look number 1 is the AO Sandstone tee with joggers. One of my favorite looks is to just wear a plain tee with some joggers, whether it's the gray ones that I have or some black pants or the black joggers, because it's a clean and minimal look. I love wearing these for editing, shoots, and even going out to the park playing with my daughter, just everyday things. The classic AOT is always my go-to. And look number 2 is the AO Polo with black jeans. This is probably gonna be the new standard for when I go do higher end shoots, meet with clients. I love that it's a polo so you look more presentable, but it's also the same fit and shape and comfortable wear as their other tees. So whenever I wore this on a shoot yesterday, it was great. So pair this with some black jeans and that's probably my favorite look. And lastly, my 3rd favorite from their new spring collection is the Wolf AO Henley. This Henley would be perfect for going on a date night, dinner, just going out with friends. This is probably what I'm gonna be wearing tonight actually, because we're going out to dinner, me and my wife. And I'm gonna pair it with the black Legacy jacket. Pair this with black jeans, another favorite look. So if you wanna check out Cuts in their new spring collection, head to the link in the description, use my code AndreRestrepo, and get 15% off your next purchase. Thanks so much to Cuts for sponsoring this video. Now back to the tips. And now for tip number 3, you wanna capture the right angles that showcase the food the best. You don't want to just do different angles and have every food item look differently, especially thinking about where these images are gonna end up, in this case on a mobile ordering site. You'd want to see everything relatively the same so it all looks cohesive and not distracting. So in this case, I just stuck to 3 main shots. First being a point of view style shot, basically how you would naturally see the photo if it was sitting right here. This is kind of a 45-degree angle, and this is how most people would see their food, especially when they're eating it. So this is where I used my tripod because I could set up a scene, go back, check, tweak, do that, all that back and forth, and still keep the same perspective. So that was definitely the main angle I used. The second one is a flat lay. Food photography showcase is great for flat lay photos, and what that is just an overhead perspective of the food. So I made sure that each scene kind of worked in different ways where I could do that 45-degree angle and an overhead. And lastly, you just want to capture some close-ups. This way you deliver a good variety to your client, and it's not just one good photo, but also another variation or a couple variations that they could use for social media, marketing, website, anything else. So I made sure to get that 45-degree angle, an overhead angle, and then some close-ups of the food that would work for that. And I think that was a great variety, and they were really happy with it. And I honestly love doing things handheld, especially because I can just really kind of fine-tune my composition, but it was honestly a great decision to use a tripod, especially for that main shot, because having your hands free, being able to tweak some things or hold a reflector was really helpful. So strongly encourage you to use a tripod. And the next tip is to use a very specific filter, and that is a polarizer filter. So I've talked about a polarizer filter, I feel like so many times on this channel, but I just feel like it constantly becomes even more and more useful to me. So I primarily use this for real estate to cut out reflections from wood floors, But this works great for food photography as well because food can be really shiny. So this is where a circular polarizer comes into play. This will help you control how much shine and reflection you get on your food. Now notice I said control and not cut out. You don't want to completely cut out all the reflections to where you have a super flat image. One of the things that I did was actually just adjust this a little bit, take the photo, adjust it again, take the photo. That way in editing I could see, okay, this one has like no shine, this one has a lot of shine, this one has a little bit, and see what looked best. If anything, we actually added more shine to some of the food, like the burgers and the fries, by spraying some cooking spray on it, and that worked really well, especially because I could control how much shine would be on them to really get the look that I wanted. And honestly, having a little bit of shine in them looked a lot better than having it totally flat. So glad I totally didn't cut out the shine and reflection out of them. Kind of like in this case right here, you can see this shine right here from that light on the wood. Put this on, I can turn it, and you can see how it's like pretty much gone. And these filters are specifically by Moment. I have a variable ND and a circular polarizer set from them. They're really affordable and they work really well. If you want to check those out, they're linked down below. And the last tip that I have is to not over edit your photos. I feel like nowadays it's so easy to go overboard with your editing, and I feel like it's way easier to stand out with your photography nowadays if you just actually edit less. Keep your things more minimal, more natural looking. Think about things like where these photos are gonna live. Should you really do a really moody, awesome edit on a photo that might end up on a really clean web page? Or are you gonna look back at these 5 years from now and be like, what was I thinking? So I've definitely been rethinking my approach to editing, and especially in this case, because I crafted the look so much in camera, I hardly had to do anything. The main things you want to focus on in editing for food photography is just enhancing the colors and the lighting. Make sure the photo looks really dynamic, and do some dodge and burning on your food photos because that'll make the photo really pop. For example, in this case, I dodged a lot of the parts of the main food, and then I kind of burned some parts that were not so important. That way, your eyes were drawn in even more to the center of the photo. And lastly, make sure to remove any blemishes or distractions that don't need to be there. For example, in a couple of the photos, there was a couple of ketchup drops or a couple of fuzzes on the material we were using. Anything that just makes it look not as clean and takes away from the photo, I removed it in Lightroom. Now, because we don't have to do it in Photoshop, now that we have the clone stamp tool in there, is really great because I don't have to jump to Photoshop. Yeah, now that I think about it, I didn't jump to Photoshop for hardly anything. I did it all in Lightroom, so that's nice. And here's a pro tip that I love to do with most of my photos is I create a radial filter and I invert it and I bring down the exposure. That way it's more of like a vignette on the photo that I can fully control. Again, darkening those corners, bringing emphasis to the center of the photo, immediately drawing your eyes into that and not have you wondering what the subject is. So you immediately know, oh, that's what it is, and it looks really good. So that's pretty much it. That is a breakdown of my recent food photography photo shoot, and honestly, I would love to do more of them. Like, I think I might actually pursue putting some of these up on a site and maybe reaching out to local restaurants in my area because I really enjoyed it. And it's been a while since I've gotten to do a really different type of photography because obviously if you've been around on this channel, it's mostly about real estate and video work. So having something fresh like this was a lot more enjoyable just because it was new to me and it really pushed me to create the best food photos that I could. And I'm honestly pretty proud of them. So I would honestly love to do more. So that's pretty much it for this video. Leave a like if you enjoyed, comment down your thoughts, subscribe if you haven't already. I would love for you guys to be part of the channel, and I'll see you guys in the next video. And thanks so much to Cuts for sponsoring this video. Make sure to check out the new spring collection from Cuts.